Hey guys, hey, Mr. Graves here. We're going to be talking about slope for the second video of our unit 3 here. Um, Before I continue, I have to get this out of the way first by going over a couple of examples of what is exactly slope. So I'm going to use an example here, like say y equals negative 5x minus 1, right? So you guys have seen that before. That's an example of something called a linear function. Right, linear function. Call it a function because when you graph it, it'll give you a straight line, right? So let me continue. Now you've also seen as y equals mx plus b. In the last video I did just before this one, I talked about the fact that the m, actually let me use a much darker color because that's way too light. Good, so we have our m, which is our slope. We also call this the coefficient as well. So that word coefficient just means the numerical value in front of the x, right? And then we also have the b, which is the y-intercept. And that's simply where the graph crosses the y-axis, right? Then we have the y. I call the y the dependent variable. I think in your assignment, they call it the dependent quantity, but I prefer to use the word variable because it's just a number. And that's also your output. So that's what you get when you put in something. I'm going to go over the inputs and outputs here as well. So that way it'll make perfect sense. And then I have one more to talk about, and that's the x. I want to circle the x. And x is your independent variable, or as your book would say, your independent quantity. All right. And that's your input. So with that said, the y equals mx plus b, that is the example of the slope-intercept formula. Sorry about the bad music in the background. Sounds terrible. Okay, so slope-intercept formula looks like that. Now let me talk about inputs and outputs here. And the best way to do that is to go to a new page. Fortunately, will it let me draw a shape like this? You know what? No, we'll do it the hard way. Delete. There we go. So I'll just draw it. So I'm gonna have a table. Let's just say y equals 2x, right? And we're gonna make the x be the input table, the input side of the table. The y is gonna be the output side of the table. We're gonna have x here. We're gonna have the y over here. So let's say I do 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And this right here, we're gonna call this part in between the x and the y. I'm gonna call this the function table. So in our function, we have, I shouldn't do the equal sign, I'm just the dot dot. Y equals 2x, right? That's the function. So I'm going to take all the x's, I'm going to replace them with right here. See how I did that? Same thing, 2 times 1, 2 parentheses 2, 3 parentheses, oh, not 3, I'm sorry. That should be 2 parentheses 3. Sorry. 2 parentheses 4, and 2 parentheses 5. So all I've simply did, guys, here on the table is I replaced, see how I did that? I replaced the x right here. That's why I'm doing a different color code so you guys can see I'm just substituting in numbers, right? And then when after I do that, it's really going to be 2 times 0, which is going to be 0. Same thing, 2 times 1, which is 1. 2 times 2, which is 4. That shouldn't be 1. That should be a 2. I'm sorry. That should be a 2. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 4, which is 8. And 2 times 5, which is 10. Notice the answers, right? So, right, this is 2, this is 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. All of those correspond to the Y numbers, right? See how that matches my answer? So essentially, my X, which is the red, I have to take that and I'm going to input it. Unknown color. Sorry about that. I got a phone call. I have to deny that because it was a. It's weird. It was a number. I don't pick up numbers I don't know. So doesn't bother with that nonsense. So why? So essentially, our function right here is how we are going to actually get our answers. This is our function. As you can see, all I did was I took my X number, right? And I replaced it. These are my X's right here in red. And my Y numbers, my answer, my output, right, is in purple. So I hope that makes sense how the input and output, think of it as the multiplication table, right? Also, notice one more thing if I continue. See how this is going up by 2? Sorry about this terrible song in the background. And then this other side is going up by 1. So this kind of table like this, so that should be a plus. There we go. The slope, M, is really equal to the change in Y over the change in X. So it looks like the Y is changing by 2, right? And X is changing by 1. And 2 divided by 1 is 2. So yeah, we have a slope of 2, which by the way matches our equation. So I hope that makes some sense. Now, we got that out of the way. I can talk about finding the slope from 2 different points. Sorry. From 2 points. To find the slope from 2 points, I'm talking about when they give you 2 ordered pairs. Remember, ordered pairs, I need to make sure I write this, because some of us may not know it. We do ordered pairs as X and Y. So say ordered pair, we have an ordered pair of 8, 10. And we have another ordered pair of -7, 14. So to find the slope from 2 lines, M, same thing as slope, is y2 minus y1, right? Divided by x2 minus x1. So for the sake of you guys can be able to pick this up, here are my y numbers, right? This is the first y I wrote down. The second y, so I'm going to do 14 minus 10, which is 4. Oops, make that a little bit easier for y'all to see. And then I'm going to do the x numbers. So this is going to be x1, x2. So I'm going to do -7 minus 8, which is -15. And then that's why I'm going to get a lot confused. Looks like, how do I get -15? Easy. I have -7 minus 8, right? I can draw my little scoreboard signs of positives and negatives. Looks like I scored a -7, and then I scored a -8. But I obviously have not scored a single positive answer at all, right? So my answer is going to be negative, and the negatives are winning by a total of 15. That's where I got the 15 from. So my slope from those two lines is -4/5. Now, you can put the negative on the bottom or the top. It doesn't change anything. This is still the same thing, guys. Still the same thing. It's still going to give you a negative answer because a -4 divided by +15 is still going to give you a negative. I'm not going to try to do this in my head right now. I feel like reaching for my calculator. But it's essentially the same thing. Now let me do another one so that way we can get better grasp of this from finding the slope of 2 points. Let me do parentheses. Let me do smaller numbers here. Let me do -3 comma 1 and -17 2. So again, I write my formula down. M is y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. Here's all my y numbers right here. I'm going to make sure I note that. The y's are in red, so this is y1 and y2. I wrote them in that order. So I'm going to have 2 minus 1, which is 1. Hope no one has any questions at that point. Then I'm going to do the x numbers. So this is going to be x1, x2. Make sure I denote that with my colors. So it's going to be -17 minus -3. See how I put it in the parentheses? So that way you'll know that this is actually going to be a -14. So my slope is actually going to be 1 over -14. Okay, now there's again going to be just some confused faces. How did I get -14? I'm doing -17 minus -3. So where you have two negatives side by side, this is really doing -17 minus 1. Oops, not 1, sorry. This is really -17 plus 3. Because again, two negatives become a positive. That's where that comes from. And now I'm just doing -17 plus 3 again, put up the little scoreboards, different colors so that we keep that organized. Right here. So I'm going to go ahead and circle my -17, put them on the negative side. God, that song sounds terrible. Terrible. There we go. Then a positive score 3. Obviously, right now, the negative team is winning, and they're winning by 14. Now, I need to go over one more thing with you guys, and that's standard and slope-intercept forms. So to do that, I'm going to make a table because I'm just comparing both of them so that way you guys can see them. So standard form. And slope form. So in standard form, you notice the x and the y are going to be on the same side. I'm going to make sure I actually note that, right? X and y are on the same side of the equal sign. That's a big difference between the standard form and slope-intercept form. So you could have something like 3x plus 4y equals 5, right? Notice again, the x and the y are on the same side. I need to use a different color for that. X and y, just like that. So standard form has the x and y on the same side. But slope-intercept form does not have that, right? It has ax plus c equals whatever the y is. I'm not going to do, equals b. Yeah, that's perfect. Even better, yeah, just do y. Better equals y. So right there, you notice the biggest difference there, X is on one side, Y is on the other side, right? So a good example of that to illustrate better is when you have something like 3x plus 4 is equal to y, right? Notice x and y are on opposite sides. So that's a great way you can know that. Now I need to talk about converting. And this is where, because I've seen some of your assignments, you guys actually have to convert. We're going to convert from standard to slope. So a great example I can do, I just have to do one example so that way you can see it, like 5x plus 2y is equal to, what is it? Equal 6. Now, again, like we did before, notice how the x and the y are on the same side, right? So the first thing I have to do is I got to move the x over. And the way to move the x over, let me just erase this guy, is I am going to go ahead and do the inverse, okay? That means I'm going to do the opposites. Okay, that's weird. I don't know what that even is. So the inverse, first step, I'm going to do the inverse. So step 1 here, do the opposite, the inverse of positive 5x. So the inverse of positive 5 is I'm going to subtract 5x on both sides. See that? Oh no, I'm going to have to make sure I put this here. There we go. So now that goes away. I bring everything down. Let me do that in different colors so I can illustrate again. I think the colors actually help you guys out a lot on when I do this. So second step, bring everything down. Who's blowing up my phone? Oh, bring everything down. I'm Jesse Watt, and I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone who goes away. So that's 2y is equal to 6 minus 5x. And my last step, I'm going to just divide everything, divide by the y coefficient. So when I divide by the y coefficient, it goes away. So y equals 6 divided by 2, which is 3 minus 5 over 2x. And that's actually my final answer. This is my final answer right here. Now notice that the x is not in the first place. So if you wanted to rewrite this, you can say y is equal to negative 5 over 2x plus 3. And I'm done. So I hope this helped you guys a lot when it came to understanding slope a bit more. Okay, so slope is really, again, if I go back to the very beginning, right here. Why is it? Okay, there we go. So slope is the coefficient. Slope is also, so write all this stuff down. So slope m, that's the rise over the run, right? Rise how much I go up and down, and that's going to be for a positive for the y numbers. So that should be the change in y. And then when I go right to left, that's the change in x. So how much the change? So the y involves vertical, and this represents horizontal, right? Horizontal. If it goes up, it's a positive y. Down, it's negative y. Right, positive x on the x-axis. Left is negative x on the x-axis. I will stop here, and I will see you guys in class on Monday. Please remember our tutorials from 8 a.m. to 5, Monday through Thursday. So you guys should better use that time if you have any questions about what to do, okay? Take care.